enough. And the final one we're talking about today is a 10:15 p.m. game Eastern time on ESPN. That is Arizona at number 10 Utah. The storyline to know, again, is just pretty simple. Is Cam Rising? Is he going to play or is he not going to play? What is he going to look like if he does play out there? He suffered a finger injury on his throwing hand against Baylor in week 2, and he was questionable all week leading up to the game against Oklahoma State. And most people, including Dorian Singer, their top wide receiver, said Cam is playing. Don't worry about it. He'll be out there. Dawn, and he was warming up pregame too. 20 minutes before kickoff, Kyle Whittingham not only announced that he won't be playing, he decided he won't be playing. They said they went into the huddle in the locker room and they said, hey, Cam, can you go out there and do it? And Cam's like, listen, I'm not 100% right now. And they said, all right, Isaac's going to play. They decided that 20 minutes before kickoff. Usually these things happen on game day, right? They have the entire day to say, okay, you're going to start, kid. 20 minutes before kickoff, Isaac Wilson finds out, hey, you're going to start today. So not a great situation for Isaac Wilson to make his second career start. But still, they won that game. But his injury status is still the biggest storyline heading into this week's clash against Arizona. And Arizona coming off a bye week after being dominated by Kansas State a couple weeks ago. So Arizona's had a couple weeks to try to recover from that loss and prepare for Utah. And Utah now is just wondering whether or not Cam Rising will be their quarterback this week.
Well, you know Coach Whittingham's just messing with you, right?
Dude, the best poker player in college football, bar none.
He didn't decide that 20 minutes before.
I know,
he decided that back on Monday, and he just decided to mess with us all week.
Again, I bring up the story. When we interviewed Kyle Whittingham last year, literally the week of the Florida game, and I said, Coach, Cam Rising coming off the torn ACL, is he going to be ready for week 1? And he's like, Max, he will be 50. He's 50-50. He might play, he might not play. And he didn't play, and we're like, okay, 50-50, and he didn't play the rest of the year. So Kyle Whittingham is the best at just lying.
Heavy 50.
Maybe not lying to the media. Yeah, heavy 50. Maybe not. I'm going to say lying to the media, but he's really, really good at holding his cards close to the chest, and I think he's done a great job with that. And obviously makes our lives very hard and Utah fans' lives very hard. But hey, it honestly helps out the team when you don't know who's going to be playing quarterback out there. So it's been really interesting to see what happens this week with Cam Rising. But Dawn, you have the other side of the ball with this Arizona offense that is looked kind of pedestrian at times this year. So what should we be looking out for when Arizona's offense goes up against a really good Utah defense?
Well, it's probably good that they got a bye week before this game to really get back to the drawing board after the K-State game when it just seemed they had no answers. And right now, my matchup for this game is Tetero McMillan against the world. Because that's essentially what their offense has been through 3 games. Is he had the big 300-yard game against New Mexico. Then he was shut down against Northern Arizona in a not that impressive victory. You went over them double teaming and doing all make somebody else beat you. And against K-State, he had a decent game, but they need another answer. If it's the run game with Quali Conley, cool. That kind of hurts that Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt has those eligibility issues if he's just done for the year or we don't know what's going on there. And they need somebody else in the passing game to step up because we've seen 2 different strategies with this now. With Northern Arizona, it was the bracket thing that you talked about. And with K-State, honestly, they just lined up in man coverage across the board. And McMillan was getting open just about every play. And K-State essentially saying it without saying it said, okay, throw it to him every time then.
Yeah.
Go let him get 30 to 35 catches. Throw every ball to him. We dare you because everyone else, there was no separation. And
he was gassed in that game too.
Understandably so. Yeah. Understandably. I mean he's open every play, but at a certain point, you just can't throw him the ball 35 times, can you? Unless he's got the endurance of Travis Hunter and he can just do that. But look, through 3 games, 85.8 receiving grade, 453 yards. That's the most by anyone who's played only 3 games instead of 4. I believe that's the 8th best receiving grade in the country. But they have nobody else at receiver or any position who has at least 100 receiving yards. It's just not this right now. At least from what we've seen before this bye week last week in the first 3 games, it's just Noah Fafita and Tetero McMillan trying to will them to the end zone, right? And look, Utah plays man coverage at a reasonably high rate, and they do pretty well at it. They have a top 20 coverage grade. They run a lot of cover 1, and in cover 1, they have a top 20 coverage grade. They're good in man coverage. Maybe they don't have that one individual guy who's like lights out, Will Johnson, stick him on McMillan, but they're going to compete. He had a 100-yard game against them last year in what turned out to be a blowout, but turnovers early in that game. I believe there was a block punt. Before you could blink, Arizona was up 28-0, and Utah just doesn't win games that they're down 28-0. That's not a thing. This Arizona, it's just I think we've said this for 2 or 3 weeks already. They need somebody else. Last year,
Jacob Cowing
last year they had Jacob Cowing.
Yeah.
They had Tanner McLaughlin. They had Jonah Coleman.
Right.
They had Michael Wiley, who had a great game in this game last year. But they have none of that right now. Quali Conley, I'm not even sure is right now better than Coleman or Wiley were last year, and certainly not in the receiving game. So they're lacking depth, and they're lacking answers when teams just get in press and they just lock up everybody else. And I mean, honestly, there was plays against K-State where it looked like it was, football's 11 on 11. It looked like 11 on 2. And you need something. I know he's maybe the best receiver in the country, but they need something else if they're going to win this game, especially in Utah.
Yeah, definitely. And like I said before, I mean, Jacob Cowing, as the weeks go on for Arizona, he looks more and more valuable from last year.
And the fun part in that game last year, Jacob Cowing had like 2 catches for 10 yards. But it's the idea that you have that guy. So then, okay, well, we have to worry about Cowing, and they're doubling Cowing, or they're doing whatever to Jacob Cowing, and now, okay, then Tet tees off and Michael Wiley tees off, and we're good to go. We have other threats, but right now there's not even other threats that can take it off of McMillan.
No, definitely not. And honestly, if Cam Rising doesn't play in this game, Dalton, it could kind of be a one-man show on the other side of the ball with Mekhi Bernard against the Arizona run defense. So Isaac Wilson got a second career win this past Saturday against Oklahoma State. Great win for him, obviously, but he was hardly the reason for their offensive success. He's the younger brother of Zach Wilson, obviously, has a 35.8 passing grade in that win over Oklahoma State. No big-time throws and 2 turnover-worthy plays. He did have some nice gamer moments in there. He had a couple nice runs in there and a couple decent throws in there as well, but overall, not a great passing performance from Isaac Wilson. Again, true freshman. He's got a long time. He probably is going to be the guy for Utah after this year when Cam Rising finally exhausts his eligibility, but not a great second game for Isaac Wilson in that one. Instead, what they did was they relied on Mekhi Bernard for most of their offensive production, and he did an excellent job against Oklahoma State. 26 carries, 186 yards, led the nation in week 4 with 142 yards after contact. So if Cam Rising is once again out, and the reason why his rushing grade is that low, I think he had a fumble in that game, so that's why I dragged it down so much. But overall, he was really good. I mean, 26 carries for 186 yards. I believe it's about 7 yards a carry or something like that if my math is correct. So he was excellent. But if Rising is out, or if he plays and his throwing ability is still hindered by that injury to his, I think, ring finger on his throwing hand, they're going to need Mekhi Bernard again to carry their offense. And Arizona's run defense has been really shaky this year. Right now, they're 80th in run defense grade at a 73.1, and they're 99th in yards per attempt allowed at 5.3. But the one thing I'll say is the 2 games where they really struggled on run defense were against New Mexico and against Kansas State. And the 2 similarities between those 2 teams, New Mexico and Kansas State both have quarterbacks that can run the football very well. In Devin Dampier for New Mexico and Avery Johnson for Kansas State. They're each among the top 15 quarterbacks in the country in rushing yards this year. Isaac Wilson can run. Cam Rising can get out there a little bit, although he doesn't look as dynamic as he was in years past, notably so because of the knee injury. But you got to be account for them. But they don't need to be game planned for like Devin Dampier and Avery Johnson need to be. So I think the reason why those you mentioned before in the breakdown of the Arizona game, the linebackers really struggle because they don't know who has the football. Utah is a little more straight up, right? It's going to be Mekhi Bernard. And now, for Arizona at least, I'm still worried about them because I actually looked at it, Dalton. They're still one of the worst run Ds in the country, even when it's a straight up handoff. So that's still not great for them. But now, at least for their linebackers in this game and their defensive linemen and whoever, they know who will get the football. So now it's a matter of, okay, are you going to be physical enough and are you going to want it more than the offensive line across from you? Utah's offensive line has been really good this year. That's the question now. So it'll be more straight up for them against Mekhi Bernard, but it still could be a bad matchup for them. So if they only have to focus on him, though, maybe they could be a little bit better in run defense. But if not, then I think it could be a long night for the Arizona defense.
Yeah, they have very downhill linebackers that, much like, say, a Florida State, they really like to just get the gaps and work downhill, like you mentioned. The other problem they've had is tackling. If I remember right, seeing it earlier today, I think they have the second lowest tackling grade in the Power 5 as a team.
Let me look now.
I think it was Texas Tech and then them towards the bottom down there. The tackling has been an issue. You're right. Getting physical with Arizona is the way to do it, on top of keeping the ball out of Noah Fafita's hands and not letting Tet get the 20 catches and 300 yards that he could get, right? So ball control is big, but you're right. Utah's run game is much more straightforward. You don't get it like say a Georgia Tech or a K-State, like you mentioned, where you have to worry about the quarterback so much. You mentioned Rising's mobility. It's solid. It's not A+. Like
Isaac Wilson can run, but not like Avery Johnson.
Yeah, it's a different thing, and their offense isn't based on that. It's based on getting downhill and getting 5 yards and getting behind their offensive line. Yeah.
So you're right. Actually, Arizona's second worst tackling grade in the Power 4 this year, right ahead of, I should say, Texas Tech, who is the worst. So Arizona 50.3 tackling grade.
Yeah.
Dolan, you and I had Arizona winning the Big 12 preseason, and we kind of feel a little shaky about that prediction right now. But will we get back on track with that prediction, or will Utah at home and what is one of the best home environments in college football, will Utah show why they're a top 10 team in the country
It's tough because part of this with Arizona in the Big 12 picture is that at least that K-State game was technically a non-conference game.
True.
That helps. They're not 0-1.
True.
And even if they were to lose this game, then they would only be 0-1 instead of 0-2. And I think there are some other teams in this conference who are better matchups for them, for just all the way around. Not as good on defense, not as good in the run game, especially as K-State. There's some good run games, and they have to contend with it. But I think they stand a better chance. Like, you got maybe the two best teams in the conference right out front as your first two games. One of them, again, didn't count, but still. I've got Utah in this game. I just can't, from what I've seen from both teams, again, Utah's win over Oklahoma State was way more dominant than the final score will tell you. If you didn't watch the game, they dominated Oklahoma State for 90% of it, and then Alan Bowman gave them a little charge at the end and whatever. Utah was dominant. They're at home. They've been dominant at home since 2021. They're just nuts. But they've lost one home game in the last 3.5 years. Kyle Whittingham's just got the magic, doesn't he? And I just think what we've seen from Utah so far, for me, and what we've seen from Arizona, if Arizona didn't get significantly better and more well-rounded during their bye week, I just cannot in good conscience pick them. I can't do it because I know what you're saying. There's a chance Cam Rising doesn't play. They even dominated Oklahoma State without him. They did, and I just think Kyle Whittingham, he's got the magic. He just knows. They just know how to win games. They defy a lot of the analytics, and it's sometimes like the old Patriots thing or the Chiefs right now, where it's like somehow at the end of the game they just have more points than the other team. I think that's going to be the case again. I've got Utah 23-20.
Yeah, it's one of the best coaching staffs in college football. I actually have Arizona winning this game. I think they will get the second home loss for Utah since 2021. Like you said, 27-24, I have it. I just think with Cam Rising health still in doubt, Arizona having 2 weeks to prepare as well, I think the Wildcats pull off a massive road upset. I think we'll see a little bit better from them. I think the run defense thing is a very big question mark, but like I said before, the fact that they're not facing a truly elite mobile quarterback this week in Cam Rising or Isaac Wilson, that should help them out as well. I think the Wildcats get a massive road upset and reestablish themselves as a Big 12 contender right now. So I got Arizona winning this one 27-24.
How many yards does it take for McMillan? How many yards does he get in that scenario?
I think he probably needs $150.
Think so?
Probably.
$150, maybe 200.
Yeah, $150. Okay. I would say $150.
150. If he doesn't get 150, they're going down. We think. I'm just curious what the number is because
it's got to be a lot.
Regardless, it's going to have to.
It's going to have to be triple digits.
It's going to have to be like Bolitnikov type performance. Feels like every week, but I was just curious. I was curious on that because I'm like, how much is it? Because
and Zemiah Vaughn's a really good corner too, so that'd be a great matchup.
They got a good group of them. They got three really good ones out there. There's not a terrible matchup for you. Mm-hmm. Look, it's hard to cover McMillan, but they've got guys who can at least battle. I'm
trusting Fafita, and Fafita I think is a better quarterback than anything Utah's got right now, especially with Cam Rising on an injured throwing hand as well. It's a risk. I'm taking a big risk with Colorado. I'm taking a big risk with Arizona. I'm going risky in the two Big 12 games we're talking about today, Dolan, or two of the three, I should say. But yeah, I got Arizona winning this one. So Arizona 27-24.